All right, welcome to the party, pals. GRC Mafia. I see so many different familiar faces popping in. We got Rhonda, we got B-Dubs, we got Phil. Let's see here. We also got JT Webb popping in, Rania. We got Rothmere. We got 8-Bit popping in. GRC Mafia. Oh, look at that. We got Steph Cluis popping in as well, and Memberletti. Bam, GRC Mafia. So as usual, I'm going to go through our introduction here, cover a couple of the different topics and key points. And then we have a special presentation today with Alana for navigating GRC technology implementation that we'll be stepping into in just a moment. So we like to premise every single one of our live streams with the fact that we're here to break down barriers, foster collaboration and community, working towards a more secure future together. We can make that happen way easier as a community, and that's industry-wide, not just Study GRC, but there's a lot of other communities out there as well that make that possible. It's the whole industry as a whole. So definitely learn and grow together. If you guys have questions or anything like that, definitely pop those into chat. And then I'm going to add some more details to that as well. I'm probably going to end up taking this section out for our typical schedule. I feel like everybody's starting to get a little used to that, but I'll provide just a little recap. So Monday and Tuesday, we're doing hands-on for GRC. Wednesday is our GRC Let's Get Technical, going over more technology-based topics. And I'm hoping to be breaking into like GRC or technology-related labs here, not this month, but next month. Friday, we have a 1 hour AMA open stage, like just a 1 hour socialized session on Fridays. And then, of course, Thursdays tonight is our primary meeting. So the first two Thursdays of every month, we have speakers. The third or the middle week for the Thursday is just our open discussions. And the last Thursday of every single month, we have our job readiness and group resume review session. Now, we're going to go through the presentation itself, and then we will be taking and marking those questions. So if you guys have questions throughout, definitely drop those, and we will mark those for the end. If there's something that we can't answer right off the bat, we will, but otherwise we'll follow that up after the presentation. After the presentation, we'll also go through and open up the stage and move into our open discussion as we typically will do. I want everybody to keep in mind, if you do want to join the stage, we want you guys to feel comfortable to do so. You do not have to turn on your video. The microphone is, definitely encouraged if you want to join the stage, but you guys can also hang out and chat. Another really important thing to mention too is it's our Thursday meeting. So if you guys haven't grabbed it already, I just dropped it in the chat here for the badge. And then also, so with the badge, you can earn your badge every single week. So Thursday is our primary meeting. You hop into our Discord, head on over to the live chat, and you can do GRC Mafia in order to gain your weekly badge for the GRC Mafia. And then also joining our Discord server also allows you to share your own personal LinkedIn, your social profiles and so forth as well. Drop it into the live chat and it'll automatically broadcast that to all of the different platforms that we're streaming to. And also throughout, ask questions, share resources, or other things that you're working on and so forth. Even if it doesn't relate directly to what we're talking about, worst case scenario, we'll circle back around to that. Now, if you do share something that you don't want to be public, just reach out to myself either on Discord or LinkedIn. You can also contact me at contact@studygrc.org, and we could see about how we can get that redacted. And then, of course, we also have B-Dubs. So you guys may be familiar with B-Dubs. She has her own personal website, brittwhite.io, where she's publishing articles. And then she's also doing a CISSP study group for the next 15 weeks, which I'm going to drop that in chat here too. So definitely check that out. And our website as well. So that's where you're going to find the rest of the platforms that we stream to, along with our resources page and our calendar, which is going to be the most up-to-date information to see what's coming up here in the future. And then, we also published our giveaway, which is going to be a ticket to the upcoming HIPAA COW. So HIPAA COW, they have a bunch of resources and community around HIPAA in particular for healthcare, and they have a conference coming up virtually on April 10th and 11th, and that's going to be our monthly giveaway. That you can also find more details on inside of our Discord server. That's all managed by that automation bot there. And without further ado, thank you all for joining in, and I'm going to go ahead and transition over here. Let's see. Thank you so much for joining us today, Alana. And I'll go ahead and pass it on over to you. Again, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate the invitation to be here. Thanks, B-Dubs, as well. This is great. I'm super excited. So welcome, everyone, to Navigating GRC Technology Implementations. This is your Survivor's Guide. My name is Alana Boyajian, and like I said, I'm super excited to be here tonight. I'm going to share with you some of my experience with deploying technology solutions. I've deployed products for small teams all the way to global implementations over 100,000 users. And really, this will have a bent focusing on the GRC space, but this guide is really going to help you with bringing any new solution into your environment. So let's go to the next slide. All right. So key takeaways. So what I hope that you're going to get coming out of this is an understanding of how to define requirements for product evaluation, then learn how to actually evaluate the products and select a vendor. And when we look at vendors, we want to look at those who are not only able to technically address all of your requirements, but also ones that are good business partners. And so we'll talk through that. I hope you get some tips for implementing robust change management so that users will actually use their system. And then we're going to talk about a phased approach to deployment. All right, the agenda. So I'm just going to briefly give you a little bit of background of who I am. We're going to talk about the GRC landscape, how it's evolved a little bit over the last several years, and then we'll go through each of those items: the product evaluation, working with vendors, change management, deployment, and then we'll hit Q&A. All right, this is me. So you can hop over to my LinkedIn. I've got it here. Go ahead, please connect with me. You can check out my professional history. And throughout my journey, one of the things that I've really deeply valued is the power that building relationships across the business, within teams, with external partners, like how vital that is to bring about success. And that, along with, I guess, I don't know, my nerdiness for process and frameworks and continuous improvement. It's kind of how I landed in the world of GRC, as I think many of you can relate to. So currently, I'm on an amazing GRC team. I work in the hospitality industry, and I get to work with top talent and do some really cool things. So I'll share just a little bit about what I do, which is I do implementations of GRC technology, as well as other cool things as well. But before this, I was an IT and cybersecurity project manager. So I really kind of love blending these two worlds together and then bringing you this content. So hopefully you'll be able to get some tips for your next tech implementation. All right, the evolving GRC landscape. So we're going to talk a little bit about this complex world, about finding the right governance, risk, and compliance technology solution for you and how you can create a blueprint for a successful implementation. And I didn't just like magically know how to do this. Like I just happened to be at the time in my career, I was the youngest person on the team, and they're like, you're young, you do technology, go do this. And I was like, okay, I had no idea what I was doing. So you may find yourself on a team where you're asked to automate processes, deploy a company-wide phishing awareness and training program, or you're just tired of the Excel wizardry and you need to level up to keep up. So I'm hoping that what we talk about today is going to come in handy and possibly when you least expect it. So we all know that GRC today is no longer a nice to have. It's a critical component of sustainable success in any organization. And you all know this. And simply put, GRC is about aligning your organization strategy with its operations and managing risk effectively across the entire enterprise. And so choosing and implementing the right GRC solution, it can feel really daunting because what you're going to find when you start to check out the marketplace is it is now flooded with options, and every vendor will tell you that they can solve your problem. So how do you sift through the noise? How do you ensure that the solution you pick actually fits your needs and helps to solve your particular pain points. And that's what we're going to talk through today. So I'm going to walk through this kind of practical guide on how to navigate all these challenges, and you'll be able to deploy your solutions successfully. So let's get some context here around what we're talking about when we're talking about GRC solutions. So as you can imagine, just as organizations are finally understanding the importance of GRC, so are tech vendors. So the playing field a few years ago was pretty slim and sparse. So there were some big players. Auditboard's been around for a while. MetricStream, Archer, ServiceNow. They've got a GRC component or module. And what we're seeing now is that there's more and more solutions entering the marketplace. And many of them have similar features like policies and standards management, risk management, auditing capabilities, dashboards and reporting. And so I've got here, so we've got some well-known GRC vendors here, and I'm certainly not recommending any one product over another. This list is not complete, but I really just wanted to kind of give you an idea of the products that are in this space. And what I'm seeing as I'm going to conferences, that there's many niche players out there, and there's a lot of solutions that are really taking notes on what people don't like about some of the products that have been around for a while. So there's some really exciting things in this space to look forward to. Additionally, there's a bunch of phishing and awareness training vendors out there: ClickArmor, Cofense, HawksHunt, KnowBe4, Ningio, Proofpoint. Lots of really cool features in all of these products. So there's a lot to sift through, a lot to look at. And the quote unquote best GRC solution is really going to depend on your specific needs and priorities. So don't get caught up in sort of the big name, but really focus on finding the solution that best fits your organization size, your industry, the risk profile of your organization, the budget. I mean, you can't buy something if you don't have the money for it. And then you've got to look at your existing IT stack to see where it's going to fit in. So how do you pick? So let's go ahead and talk through the product evaluation process and how you find the right fit. Defining requirements. So this is really one of the most crucial steps. You really want to clearly define your business needs and your technical requirements. So I'm going to get in and give you some examples on what that means and how to do it. So this is not just about listing features. It's about understanding your specific pain points. What is the problem you're trying to solve? How can a GRC solution address them? So a couple of areas that you're going to want to consider. You're going to want to look at the specific GRC domains. Are you primarily focused on risk management, compliance, audit, a combination of these? Or, you might need like a holistic solution that can automate processes across all of these areas. So each domain has unique requirements, and you need to look at products because one product may excel in one domain versus another domain. And in some cases, and I've seen this, a product may have been built to manage risk, for example, but then they bought another company that has a compliance solution. And now they're bolted together. So you need to ask these kinds of questions because that may impact how well the product functions seamlessly as a whole. Integration. A standalone solution that can potentially create data silos across your organization. So do you need information to flow from this new system you're implementing to another workflow system? Or does the new tool need to consume data from other enterprise tools? So all these things you're going to need to consider. So you need to look at the API integrations, integrations potentially with external business intelligence tools or analytics platforms, and other enterprise platforms as well. Scalability and performance. Will the solution scale with your growing business? How much data does it need to handle? How many users? And don't just think about today. Think about where your company's going in 1, 3, or 5 years from now. So what does the user base look like then? What do the data needs look like then? So you need to consider uptime requirements and the data growth factor in here. Reporting and analytics. This is great. You can have a ton of data in your system, but if you can't get nice reports that give you actionable intel, what can you do with that data? So you really want a solution that's going to be able to provide you these insightful reports and dashboards to help you with your decision making. So some things to consider here. Are there pre-built reports for common regulatory requirements like SOX, GDPR, HIPAA, your risk framework? This can save you a lot of time and effort because otherwise you're going to have to build these reports yourself. Additionally, are there custom reporting capabilities? Maybe your CISO likes a risk report in a very specific format. So how easy would it be for you to build something like that? Is it drag and drop? Do you need to code? Do you have to export it to Power BI and then have your friend that is a Power BI nerd create a report for you after you do a favor for them? So these are all things that you need to think about. As well as interactive dashboards. So it's one thing to have something on the screen, but can you drill down into the data? Can you slice and dice the data and look at it from different perspectives? So just things to kind of consider as you're embarking on this journey. So what I like to do is I just like brainstorm, all of the questions, all of the issues, all the pain points and features and functionality, all the capabilities, and then I just kind of categorize them to create a structure. And that really helps build out the requirements component. All right, let's talk about requirements. So we could do a whole session about defining requirements. I was a requirements analyst for years. But first, let's talk about what a requirement is. So in very simple terms, it's just a descriptive statement of what the product has to do or what it has to be like. And so one thing that you're going to need to do is just be really descriptive about how you're defining your requirements. And you want to do this up front. You want to be able to effectively evaluate your different GRC solutions, apples to apples, and choose one, obviously, that best fits your organization unique needs. But in order to do that, you're going to need to have requirements that then you can kind of have a bake-off and say, yes, this solution A is able to do this requirement, but solution B can't do that requirement. So a couple of tips here is you want to be specific. So you want to avoid vague statements and you want to use quantifiable metrics wherever you can and provide specific examples. You want to be able to prioritize your requirements. What are your must-haves? What are your nice-to-haves? Those things help you focus your evaluation. This is a big one. You want to involve your stakeholders. You want to get input from as many potential stakeholders who are using the solution. And this could be not only the end users, not only the folks who are in GRC, but leadership who's going to be consuming reports. If it's a solution that might be potentially on-prem or maybe in your hybrid cloud, how is that going to be supported? So you've got to include your tech support as well. So you've got your users, your leadership, and then any other tangential groups that may have a hand in this tool is going to be a stakeholder. So you want to make sure that they are included in building out your requirements. And then think about the future. So how might your needs evolve over the next few years? So I've got a couple examples here that you can read. I'll just go through maybe like the first one. The solution must support PCI compliance requirements. So it's got to have automated control testing and documentation for payment card compliance. And this one, it's critical for your company if you process credit card payments. But also think about it. If your company doesn't do that now, but you know that they're going to be doing it in 3 to 5 years, you're going to want this feature because you don't want to bring in a solution that can't meet this requirement. And then in a couple of years, you're going to have to figure out a way to handle the PCI component of it. Your solution must be able to handle a user base of at least 500 employees and maintain acceptable performance levels. So that's another thing. Where are your users? Are they all over the globe? So you have to make sure that wherever this is going to be stored, is this going to be able to meet those requirements? And then requirements around compliance regulations that impact your business, custom report generation. Again, here with the integration, this one is a nice to have. The solution should have the ability to integrate with Salesforce, but it's not going to be a deal breaker if it doesn't. So just a couple of examples here of how to write requirements, and each one is very discrete. I like to call them atomic. They only deal with one item and one thing. Okay, so you've got your requirements, and let's take a look at how we're going to evaluate products. So I do encourage you to spend a lot of time on the requirements, because that's really going to be the basis, the baseline activity for the whole evaluation process. So let's take a look at some potential solutions. So how do we do that? Your company may have like a subscription to Gartner or Forrester research, and that can be really helpful in identifying key features and benefits, as well as who are the key players and the key vendors in the field. So a couple of ways that you can get the information you need to narrow down the playing field is to do an RFI. So and that stands for request for information. And then you may have heard RFP, which is a request for proposal. And you may not be doing all of these things in this list in this particular order, but we'll talk through that. So an RFI is really just sending a questionnaire, like a standardized questionnaire, to maybe 5 to 8 potential vendors, asking about their company, their GRC solution capabilities, their experience in your industry. And really what you're wanting to do is you want to use this to create a short list of vendors who seem like a good fit for you. But also, when you do something like this, the vendors are going to start blowing up your mailbox. So just know that. All right, so once you have a short list, then you're going to want to do an RFP. And that goes deeper. So that's a request for proposal. This is where you outline every single requirement and ask the vendors to provide detailed proposals on how their solution is going to meet your requirements. They're going to include pricing. They're going to include implementation plans. They're going to include how they support the product and what their support services look like. So this RFP process really allows for that structured comparison of different solutions, and this will get you to that apples and apples. All right, demos and trials. Seeing is believing. So demos will let you see that software in action. Vendors typically are going to highlight their key features, how they address common GRC challenges, and also you're normally going to have a call with them in advance so that they can tailor their demo to address your particular pain point. So it's a value add for you. So when these are happening, pay close attention to the user interface. How intuitive is it? And whether it aligns with your user's technical skills. Demos are free. Vendors are happy to do it. And that's what their sales teams are for. Hands-on trial, even better than a demo, is if they give you an account and you can kind of get a chance to test drive the software. You can check out some of the features. It's probably not going to be everything. It might be for a week or two. You might be able to input some of your own data. And they are limited, but they do provide some value in the solution's usability and whether or not it might meet some of your requirements. I mentioned this earlier, but independent analyst firms like Gartner and Forrester, I think IDC is another one. They publish reports evaluating various solutions. And these reports are going to give you insights to market trends, vendor strengths, vendor weaknesses, and key considerations for solutions. Many of you may be very familiar with the Gartner Magic Quadrant. That's another good tool as well. There's also peer reviews, case studies. You may even be able to talk with one of their current customers and get some insight. And that would be really cool because then you can get some real life insight into what it's like working with that vendor and how the implementation went. And even better, if there's time and you have a test environment and technical support, I'm spoiled, I have these things, proof of concept can go further than a trial. So really what you do is you're going to get the vendor to help you implement a version of that solution in your own test environment. You're going to use your own data, and you can focus on specific use cases and just kind of hammer on that tool and see if it's going to work for you. And one of the cool things about doing a proof of concept is you can identify early any potential implementation gotchas before you do a full-scale rollout. So by combining all of these techniques, you can get a really good understanding of the products that are out there, and you can get that list down to maybe 2, 3, 4 potential vendors that may have a solution that works for you. All right, so you've got your requirements and you worked your butt off to get a really good solid list of requirements. You've stepped through product demos. So you've seen everything out in the marketplace. You've done an RFI. Maybe you've done a proof of concept. You've dropped your RFP. Now you've got to pick something. So when you're going through the selection process, consider some of these things. Features and functionality. So of course, does it meet your specific requirements that you defined? And for the ones that are not met, you need to ask yourself, can you live without it? Or one other thing is, maybe the vendor doesn't have it now, but it's on the roadmap. So you might only have to wait a couple months until it's going to be integrated into your tool. So those are things that you're going to want to ask your vendor as well. It's like, if you don't have XYZ, are you going to have it? Is it in your backlog? Usability and user experience. Is it intuitive and easy to use? If it's complicated, nobody's going to use it. And so you need to also think about how much training you might need to provide to get this thing off the ground. Security and compliance, our favorite words, right? Does it meet industry standards for data security and privacy as well? So I'm thinking things like, are they ISO compliant? Do they have a SOC 2 Type 2? What do their scans come back as well as your company policies. I know many companies will have a cybersecurity policy baked into the contract process, and we'll talk about that. So those are all things that you want to look at. And then the vendor reputation and support. So, and you'll get a sense of this when you're going through this process, because throughout this whole process, you're talking to vendors, you're going back and forth in emails because they want your business, right? So you know which ones are really attuned and that you're vibing with, and ones that are kind of flaky and not really giving you what you need. So is the vendor reliable and responsive? Were they just bought? Is their financial outlook stable? You don't want your vendor to go bankrupt and then you're stuck with a product that has no support and no future. So ultimately, the best GRC solution isn't just about like ticking off features on a checklist. You really want to find this right fit. So we've talked about prioritizing the functionality that aligns with your specific needs, ensuring the solution offers a positive user experience, because that will really help with adoption. And then you want to verify that it meets all of the security and compliance standards to protect your sensitive data. And you want to partner with a reputable vendor who provides reliable support and is invested in your long-term success, because this is really going to be a partnership. So we're going to get into that now. So working with vendors. All right, so let's pull on that thread a little bit. Selecting the right vendor is just as important as selecting the right product, in my opinion. So let's talk about building those strong partnerships. So in vendor selection, like I said, you're not just buying the software, you're entering into this partnership. So you really want to choose a vendor who understands your business, who shares your values, and is committed to your success. Like, they know where you're going and they're like, let's do this together. That that will really make a great partnership. And then after you make a selection, you are going to have to negotiate that contract. So don't rush this process. Actually, I don't think there is a way to rush this process, especially if legal's involved. It does take a lot of time. So some of the things that you're going to want to consider here are your service level agreements. So these are expectations and support response times. So let me think of some examples. Okay, so for example, like the vendor guarantees 99.99 uptime. What happens if you have a critical issue? How quickly will the vendor respond to you? Are you going to have to wait a week, or are they going to get back to you in an hour? What happens if something goes down? Does the vendor do a backup every day and they can commit to an RTO of 24 hours, a recovery time objective of 24 hours? So those are all things that you are going to want to bake into the contract as well. Data ownership and privacy. So your data, unless it's on-prem, is probably going to be in a cloud somewhere. So it's either going to be in your hybrid cloud, your private cloud, or more and more, it's going to be SaaS, and it's going to be in the vendor's cloud. So you need to make sure that the cybersecurity controls that they have in place are going to protect your data. And also, you need to make sure that you retain ownership of that data no matter where it lives. And then the other big thing you're going to want to consider is, what if when you end that contract, say you've used the product for 5 years, there's another great product out there and you're going to migrate. What happens to that data when the contract ends? How quickly are they going to either return it to you or destroy it? So you're going to want to have that all in the contract. And then, of course, support and maintenance terms. So you're going to want to understand what services they provide here. This can be upgrades, bug fixes, how frequently these happen, what kind of disruption and notice you get. All of these things you're going to want to understand. And ongoing vendor management. So the relationship, it's not going to end after you deploy into production. You've been building this relationship. You've been going through months and months and months of evaluating products, and you're picked one, and now you're going to implement it. So it's in production, but what that really is, that's really just the beginning of this journey that you're going on with the vendor. So you want to make sure that you're establishing these clear communication channels and have regular touch points with your product success contact. So you want to make sure that there's ongoing alignment, that they're addressing any issues proactively. So really, when you're building these strong vendor partnerships, and I've seen this, it's actually great when it comes time to adding new features, because of course, no product's going to have everything you want. But if you have a great relationship with your vendor, you can say, hey vendor, we need XYZ, and they'll be the first to add that to the backlog. And sometimes they might even ask you to be the first to try out some new functionality. And I see many vendors drive their product backlog directly from customer feedback. So if you have that good relationship with your vendor, your stuff is going to the top of that backlog. All right, so just going to reiterate a couple things here. So again, vendor partnerships, it's not just about contracts and service levels. It's really about people, which I equate to being just like GRC. So this open communication, this trust, and this shared commitment to success. So really focus on being proactive, building these relationships, and work collaboratively. And you'll really see the benefits on both sides, and it'll help you achieve your goals. All right, people do not like change, but sometimes we have to do it, right? So how do we make the best of it? So even an amazing GRC product or any IT solution really is going to fail if the employees don't adopt it. So that's where change management comes in. And the importance of change management is really the process. It's going to involve like significant changes to processes and workflows. So like you're used to email chains and Excel jockeying and spreadsheet chaos. So change management is going to help minimize the disruption and ensure a smooth transition. Because if you're going from very manual process to automated processes, you need to bring everyone along very slowly and very consistently. So let's talk about some of the activities in change management that will help you be successful here. Stakeholder communication. So again, you've identified your stakeholders at the beginning, and they were a key part of your requirements process. And many of them may have been on the team that helped you evaluate and select the product. And sometimes the stakeholders change over time as you learn new things as you're going on the journey. So you need to make sure you know your users, you know who the invested leadership is. You've got tech support on your side. So you identify all these key stakeholders, and you're going to want to develop a communication plan to keep them informed and provide a forum for them to engage with you and share any concerns and needs and questions. And you're going to want to clearly communicate any timelines for when things are going live. So training and user adoption. So you're going to want to provide comprehensive training to ensure that your users are going to be proficient in using the system. And actually the vendor may have stuff out of the box and support some of this. But you can create one-pagers, step-by-step guides. You can have webinars, casual coffee chats, anything like that. So Q&A, just giving different avenues for folks to get training and then also ask questions. And there are going to be people who are resistant to change. And they're going to be your problem children, but they'll come around one day. So you may have to do some hand-holding here, but really just proactively address any concerns. And when you get that sense of resistance to change, just have a conversation and find out really what's going on underneath the hood. Again, this goes back to stakeholder communication, and you want to make sure that people really feel comfortable coming to you with any questions or concerns. So, I'm a big proponent of communication. I think it's crucial for successful change management. You're going to want to plan it out. Work with your technology change management team if you have one. Work with your internal communications team if you have one. They're going to help you craft the right message. So you can use a variety of channels. There's email. You can have meetings, training sessions. You're going to want to reach stakeholders in a variety of different places and make sure that everyone's on the same page and know what is happening when it is happening. All right, we've got a product. We're going to go to production with it. All right, so let's get this GRC solution into production. You've done your due diligence. Contracts are signed. Stakeholders are waiting for the go live date, and you're ready to deploy. So there's a number of different deployment models. We touched upon a couple of them: on-prem, cloud, hybrid, and this would likely have been defined in your requirements early on. But here you need to consider, if it is on-prem, do you have in-house staff to support? And hopefully you know the answer to this well before you go to deployment. But you need to make sure that they also know what's going on when the system's being deployed and are ready and able to support your system. So more and more you're going to see SaaS vendors, or it's going to be in your company cloud, and that might have some lightweight support requirements, not like a full on-prem. So you're going to want to select the best deployment model for your organization needs and the resources that you have. Okay, a phased rollout. So this is what I tend to prefer, this phased approach, if there's time in your schedule. So you want to start with a pilot group or a limited set of users, maybe 5, 10, 20, depending on how big or small your user base is. And just roll it out to a couple of users. Maybe don't even turn on all of the features and functionalities. So that will allow you to kind of slow roll this, get some feedback, make some tweaks, and then you can bring on additional users and roll out additional functionality. And that way you'll get a better idea of what issues you're going to have versus just doing a full-scale rollout and potentially have a debacle on your hands that you have to fix, which I've done before. So that'll be another session. All right, testing and QA. So you want to make sure that you test to make sure that the system's working correctly and it's meeting your requirements. So there may be some configurations and things that have to get tweaked along the way. You're going to want to do functional testing. Integration testing. Are those APIs working? Is the data that you need piped in and the data that needs to get piped out, is all of that working the way that you expect? And check in with your users, give them a guide, a user acceptance guide, and have them check off, 15, 20 things to make sure things are working from their perspective. And then after you do deployment, you're going to want to conduct a post-implementation review. And this is going to assess the success of the project overall. You're going to identify some areas of improvement. And that will help you optimize the system and ensure that it's going to meet your evolving needs. So I think that is it. That is all I got. So hopefully this provided you with some valuable insights for how to navigate the GRC tech maze. So again, remember, choosing and implementing the right GRC solution, it's not a destination, it is a journey. So hopefully I've given you some tips and tricks that will help you have a successful implementation and build a strong foundation, not only technically, but with your stakeholders and vendors. So good luck to you all, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's awesome. You covered a lot there. We do have some different questions lined up here. Let me see here. Let's go ahead and get some of these up.
That was fast and furious. I know that was a lot.
Oh yeah, great information though. You actually answered one of the questions I had because you went more in depth into the actual process itself. Let's see here. So the last point is so critical, talking about the reporting process. Here's one. So what would you recommend for a small company for the RFP, RFI phase, DIY, or is it still worth reaching out to see if they have anything?
Yeah, absolutely. And an RFI, it doesn't have to be super formal. You could probably have ChatGPT give you a template for it and, just send it out to a number of different companies. I think it is worth reaching out because that will help you get an initial baseline. That's what the RFI can do because it's going to be, it's going to be structured. You're going to ask, 4, 5, or 8 companies the same questions, and you're going to get that information back. And then that way you'll be able to do some comparison and then narrow that field down.
Now, how many would you typically recommend when you're looking for a particular product? Do you have like a number of like 3, 5, 6, or just like, is there a perfect number there?
No, there's not a perfect number. And a lot of times, I've thought something might work really well. And then we've got, we've done a demo and it's like, no, this really just isn't going to be a good fit. So, I try to talk with, you have to, it's a balance. How much time do you have? What are your resources? What are your priorities? You may only have time to look at a couple, or you have all the luxury in the world where you can evaluate the entire landscape. But if you do have the opportunity to go to conferences, that's a really great place to talk with vendors and get an initial feel. But no, I don't want to say that I have a magic number, but I'm probably not going to look at 12 solutions. I'm probably going to keep it in the single digits.
Okay. All right. Perfect. And then, the one that I actually had here is the actual approval process. So how would that typically look when you're actually looking to onboard a product and you're reaching out with those RFPs and so forth? Is that something where you would typically have to, you mentioned like the buy-in from the C-suite and so forth. Is that like one part of why it takes such a long period of time, is the approval process and multiple departments involved, or?
It can. It may go a lot faster in smaller organizations, but that's not always the case. It really just depends on your procurement process. Sometimes I've worked at companies where there isn't a procurement team. So, I'm sending out the RFPs. And I've worked at larger companies where everything goes through procurement. It's a very structured process. You have to use their template. But I definitely think that the RFP process, it can take as little time or as much time as you want, depending on how detailed it is. So one of the things that you want to do is you also want to give your vendors guardrails. You want to tell them how much information to provide you, because your time is limited. So when you're getting these responses back from them, you don't want a novel. You want them to kind of cut to the chase. So, you don't want a whole bunch of marketing material. You don't want them to write, 15 pages. You want to say, here's a question, limit your responses to half a page for each question. So if you give them, the more guardrails and guidelines you give them, the more control you have and how much time it's going to take you to conduct the evaluation. But one thing that I actually didn't address is the evaluation matrix. So, and I'm happy to share some templates that I've created before, but I like to put all of my evaluation criteria into a matrix and weight it. And so then I line up all my vendors, and as I'm going through the proposals, I can rate each vendor, and it gives me a weighted score at the end. And that way I can kind of compare apples to apples. Go ahead.
So then you're actually running off the actual data itself. And that, I think that's really good, not only for when you position that to the board or other people who are invested in that, but then you have that evidence to be like, hey, yeah, this is why we're going with this particular person.
Yeah. And I think it's also the time it takes is also going to differ. I mean, if you're spending $100,000 a year versus $1 million a year, you're probably going to have different approval levels.
100%. Yeah. And that template sounds really nice. Now, a lot of people were asking, are you okay with sharing the slides? So that's like something where you could send that over to me and I could publish that out.
Absolutely.
So perfect. Yeah. Cause there were also several people who were saying things like this, where your slides are like a to-do list basically. So that's perfect. Very nice, clear. Let's see here. We had a couple different questions for that one. And then we also had Professor Black Ops, also known as PBO. He's really well-versed with 853, asking, does security get a go or no-go vote or score? I think that was with the onboarding.
Yeah, I mean, that depends. I mean, I know that at my company, you have to go through a full cybersecurity review before anything gets deployed to production. So even if you dot all your I's and cross your T's, you may hit a stumbling block when you go through that cyber review process. And there may be some risks that have to be addressed before it gets deployed into production. So I didn't go deep into that. But that does fall into your cybersecurity processes.
Bam. And then PBO also had this question. Do you recommend going to other customer sites to review and ask them questions and pain points?
Yeah, I ask vendors frequently. Actually, recently I was at a conference and I was talking with a vendor and they introduced me to one of their customers. And so we were just chatting and it was great because I was able to ask them questions about their experience working with the vendor, how the implementation went, what kind of support they got after, all of those things that were important to me. So yeah, feel free to ask the vendor, hey, can you share the name of one of your customers with me? They may or may not, but it's worth asking.
Yeah, and especially I think that's one of the huge benefits of the conferences that I noticed is that then you can actually talk to people face to face and be like, oh, we're looking at this product too, you know? We're looking at, investing, $200,000 into this. What are your guys' thoughts? What issues have you guys had? And get those other perspectives. I think that's extremely valuable. And then also JT Webb, as my previous employers used to say, what's the worst that could happen? Oh gosh.
The whole network could go down. I don't know. Bad things.
I think that might've been in regards to change management.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Change management. I'll tell you, I deployed multi-factor authentication to several 100,000 users across the globe. And it wasn't that it was technically challenging, but we've got people all over the world speaking different languages, and now they're going to have to do a second factor when they're logging in. And so that is what it was all change management. It was all communication. It was, and that was like basically the entire project. So it wasn't really a technical issue. It was change management.
Yeah, and just kind of like what you mentioned about like the requirements for an example, we should also do like a whole Thursday, presentation and so forth for change management too. Like that, I think is a pretty big struggle point for a lot of individuals and organizations that I've talked with. Like, there's no one size fits all.
No, and I'm really lucky because we have a whole technology change management team. So I know.
I'll upload that part.
I know, but it wasn't always the case. You're often, we all know how single threaded we are in GRC. So you're often, the project manager, you're doing all the things plus your day job. And now they're like, oh, you've got to implement an efficient solution in 3 months. You're like, what?
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something that a lot of people coming into the industry don't quite grasp, because it's really the large organizations. When you get on with an enterprise, that's where you get the multiple teams and multiple individuals and so forth. That makes it way more focused for the job roles. But a large majority, if they do have like GRC or risk management itself, then you may have like I know an individual, it's literally 2 people for a 5,000 person company that has like 20 different manufacturing facilities in the US, for an example. And there's 2 of them running all 20 facilities for risk management. So yeah, that's look at healthcare for an example. Like that's another really great example from our perspective on the GRC side. Another one of these. So sorry I joined late. Talking about are we talking about tools being used by GRC people for managing all aspects of GRC?
Did you want to take it?
Oh no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we were just talking about implementing, solutions in the GRC space, and there are larger platforms like Archer, ServiceNow has a GRC module, Audit Board. There's a couple others, and then there's, also like phishing and awareness training solutions. So you may be asked to implement any one of these.
Bam. And then Shungo also asks, when talking about project management in GRC PCI, do you use tools like ServiceNow, GRC, Archer, or more towards PMP, tools like Microsoft Project, Visio, Project Libra? What's the difference?
Yeah, so Archer and the ServiceNow GRC are going to be specifically designed for your GRC processes. So I tend to use a combination because I'm a recovering project manager. I'm using the Microsoft tools like Project or Planner. I actually haven't used Visio in a while, but yeah, when I have to manage a project, I will use one of like the Microsoft Project tools to pull it all together and manage my milestones and my deliverables. But ServiceNow, GRC, and Archer, they're going to be more for integrating all of your GRC processes together, like your risk management, your audit, your compliance.
Bam. Yeah, and I actually have noticed quite a few people are now using things like diagrams.io. Like it's just a web-based diagramming tool as well. So there's a lot of different options out there. Let's see. And then what about pinning other vendors against each other? Yeah.
So usually, like when I'm going through this kind of process, like you'll have an NDA. Typically, you'll have an NDA with each of your vendors. I tend to not share who else I'm looking at, but a lot of times they can kind of guess. But I don't like to pit vendors against each other. I like to sort of play on, what are your strengths? What are you bringing to me? But I leave it up to our procurement team. If it's like we could go with either of these vendors and it's coming down to price, I'll let somebody else kind of do all that haggling for me. But yeah, I don't want to see vendors in a ring kind of duking it out.
Yeah, because you got to keep it professional and everything else too. And I think that really depends on like circumstances, the situation itself to an extent. Something that I have seen is where, like when you're going through a demo, you could also ask things like, oh, well, could you explain how this particular portion of your tool is different from this other tool? That's another way that I could see you kind of working around that as well, rather than being like, oh, show us that you're better than these. Yeah,
exactly. Or, I've seen this other feature that, in some other vendor tools, can you talk to this? Is this on your roadmap or whatever? Exactly.
Yep. Bam. And then also, so Evan is calling you out, hoping to see you at Wild West Hacking Fest.
My fingers crossed. That would be awesome.
Bam. And then let's see. And then I'm going to drop the stage link. Are you still good on time?
Yeah, I got about 15 minutes before I got to get the kiddos up to bed.
Bam. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. So I just went ahead and dropped the stage link itself. So if you guys would like to come up, I want everybody to feel comfortable to come up here on stage. If you guys have questions or otherwise, you want to come up and ask other questions or whatever you guys want to do. One of the other things that was mentioned is somebody said, thank you for the gift, for the membership giveaways. I definitely wanted to throw that out there for the community. We were able to finally enable that for YouTube. And that just makes it a little bit easier for you guys to try to support if you guys would like to. But the main reason was because I love GIFs. I love the emojis. And that's the only option that YouTube provides in order to have those as well. So don't want you guys to feel obligated for it otherwise, but I will be trying to throw those out when possible as well. So definitely get on that. And then also don't forget about the badge too. So the badge is another really big thing. So if you hop into our Discord server, you can go ahead and go over to the live chat channel. The details for that are coming in chat again here in a moment. Let's see. Bam. And then if you guys have any other questions here, what is the biggest or hardest challenges you run into for vendor selection, solutions, finding a process?
I think the biggest challenge is the vendors will always say, we can do that. And you have to be able to get to the meat of really what they can do, because you have to know if you're dealing with a salesperson or if you're dealing with a technical person. So you're going to want to dig and really try to, get to the meat of it. Have them demo it for you. Like, hey, walk me through A to Z exactly how that feature works. And I think that's kind of the biggest challenge, because when you meet these vendors at conferences, they can solve world hunger. I mean, this is, they're trying to sell the product to you. So you really have to get to the core of if they can meet your requirement or if they're just saying that they can. So don't be afraid to ask the hard questions, because that's their job, is to demonstrate that to you.
And then also, I hope you don't mind, but so there was also another person who was asking a question the other day that I think you would have a great response for, because I understand that you also are pretty involved with like company culture, right? Mm-hmm. And so they were asking, what their question was along the lines of is, what particular aspects do you look for somebody in GRC for those soft skills as far as like company culture goes? Like if you could list out like a couple different soft skills or otherwise that somebody could work or practice on or otherwise for that company culture aspect and to try to drive that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I look for is the ability to build relationships and reach across the entire organization. And who are you somebody that can? I don't want to say like get along with everybody, but really just be able to bring teams together, collaborate, help people understand why it's important to, we don't just have process and policy and standards for the sake of having these things on paper. So being able to communicate the true value of why how the work that what they're doing kind of feeds into this whole cycle. So it's really understanding the business kind of at the 50,000 foot level, all the way down to the details, and then being able to sort of stitch together all of these different pieces so that you can get that full picture. So for me, it's really the relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, I had mentioned to you before when we were lining this up that the whole company culture aspect, security culture awareness and everything else is kind of a fascination of mine personally. And yeah, the reason I find it so fascinating is because like I don't feel many companies are doing it properly. It's extremely difficult and so forth, or they're not doing it at all. And I think that's what could make a really large impact to the industry itself is that security culture mindset.
Yeah.
So
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. It's really fascinating because that's actually what really interests me in GRC is it's that top down effect. And GRC, when implemented properly across the organization, when you get that buy-in and you're able to actually do it the way that it's designed to do, then you could have that impact on the organization while meeting those business objectives, but also make the processes easier for the employees. That could even have an impact on the surrounding community, the customer base, and so forth as well. There's such a huge potential there. And it actually like really excites me. Like, I think I had mentioned to you the 850 about the security awareness and privacy learning programs from NIST that recently published. It's just like that document there, like that really niches into company culture as well. And it goes beyond security too. So.
Absolutely. I actually just took over our Cyber Champion program. It was started a number of years ago. And what we did is we partner with our development teams and find the nerds over there in development that have an interest in cybersecurity. We give them special training. We train them in the OWASP top 10. We talk about secure coding. We bring in vendors and do demos. And it's really helped just drive security awareness. It's helped create bridges across the organization. It's helping them deliver better, more secure code. I mean, I think that the benefits are endless.
Yeah, exactly. And then if anybody else, especially up here on the panel, has anything else to add there, I did pull this up real quick because like Cyber Stoic, David B, is excited to see you here.
Hey. Oh, David, hey, it's been a while.
Welcome to the party, pal. What are you guys' thoughts, Steph? Company culture or the presentation itself?
Oh, the presentation was great. It was very insightful. I like to think of it, I work for such a small company that we don't really adopt very many GRC specific tools, but I think the overall practice of tool adoption across the board that works for pretty much like almost any tool that you're adopting and having review in terms of like, are we going to adopt this tool? Is it going to work? I mean, you might not necessarily be the one that goes through the first phase to decide if it's what you want to use, and there are still other tools that if you work at like an IT or any of the other, you have multiple hats that you wear, then the process is really similar. So it was really awesome and helpful for sure.
Especially that small business, that makes it a lot more difficult.
It's just a lot more work. It's just, I don't know. And not everybody works for, enormous corporations yet.
Facts.
The majority don't.
Yeah.
But I like I said, I still think that process is extremely valuable, and I thought the presentation was really insightful. It makes me think about, we're looking into trust centers right now, so that's really the closest thing that I have to relate that process to at the moment. And so that is really helpful in thinking about the next steps and like what we're gonna do.
That's cool. Well,
Bam.
Well, Steph, I'm upset with you. Alana, me and Steph was talking in the chat. I see larger companies that if you're not spending a certain dollar amount, they won't even answer your security questionnaire. Do you see that a lot? I'm starting to see that a little more and more, where if you're not spending a certain dollar amount with the big guys, they won't even answer your security questions because they believe they have it taken care of. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that's rude.
True, though.
How big is the questionnaire, PBO?
Well, I've been with a couple companies. They're like 150. We were big dogging it at the state. And I think from their standpoint, because like Alana said, when you big, we got procurement looking at it, legal. We have 5 big agencies. So I think from their standpoint, we're going to have about $50,000 worth of people looking at it. So unless you spend a certain dollar amount, they didn't want to look at it, which kind of makes sense from their part.
Welcome to the party, pal, Chris. Oh, there we go. Nice mention there too, by the way, PBO. Yeah, and then Josh asked, what are some of the highlights, must-haves for a security champions program in your org? I think that's a great question. I also have a little bit of feedback on that too, but I'll let you go first.
Sure. Buy-in from leadership. So we sold it to the VPs over the different technology functions, mobile platforms, web, the different channels that we have. So we sold it to them, and then also to Next Level. And we keep that leadership informed. And so they know who's engaged and the value that the security champions that they nominated to be in the program, how they're engaging in the program. So that I think is key.
Bam. B-dubs? Or anybody else want to chip in on that? So highlights or must-haves for a security champions program in your org?
Oh, not on that question.
I just started doing security champion of the month. If we have people that have reported, like, not test phishing emails, but like real phishing emails, and we're trying to get everybody to forward me their phishing emails, so that, and then they don't, or we have a scam, sometimes it's a phone scam or whatever it is, and they don't victim to it. I like to embarrass them in front of the rest of the company by telling them how great they are. They get to be the security champion of the month. That's been going pretty well, I think, except that it's like our 2-person finance team has been the one that's been like, spear phishing emails, here you go. This invoice.
Yeah, when I was at the big company, we try to do that. Like she said, try to get leadership and some supervisors in there, because like you said, if leadership is pushing it, then most people kind of fall in line with that. If we're trying to push security and compliance up from the bottom, a lot of times that's pretty hard. So that's kind of how we had the security champions. Then for us, I really like RFIs and RPs because we get to review it from a security perspective, talk to their security team, and kind of what things are we really looking for from a security perspective, especially PCI and NIST. You got to have a certain level of encryption where you're storing it, and which makes it a little easier because everybody now is in AWS or Azure, so they give you a lot of services that you can configure to get the level of security, but they usually charge you for them though. So, but that's kind of the only issue with that.
Yeah, and so like the part that I kind of had to add is along with that phishing as well. So Mile High in Denver for Wild West, there was an individual I was talking to, and they had recently implemented a similar type of program, like you were just mentioning, Steph, where, send in the phishing emails, report them and so forth. But one of the unique things that they were working on is actually going through and picking picking the individuals who did fall for the actual phishing testing itself or otherwise, and just trying to find different people in the departments who would be willing to go through additional training for security awareness and so forth, which they were actually already having success for. Like, people were actually kind of excited. They were like, oh yeah, I'd love that. I'd love to be part of that team type of thing, which I honestly thought was kind of surprising. But that's also where like getting not only the company culture itself on board with it, but what I found interesting with it is that the reason I think that it's working so well is because they have already spent the last 5 years actually walking the floor, going and talking to these people, having relationships with them. They go into the break room, like the GRC team themselves. There's like, I think 3 of them that work there for the risk management portion. And I think that's why it's way more successful, because they're more of a friend than, oh, those people upstairs.
So going with the carrot or the bat? I used to tell my boss we got to fire 1 person a year. And everybody
PBO. She didn't get rid of those DoD, concepts.
Yeah, she didn't like that. She was more of a carrot. I was like, big boss, we fire 1 person a year. It'll be good. Everybody, it'll travel through the org. So, but she didn't like that. Yeah.
8-Bit's missing his dark hood, his black hoodie on. That's the only thing missing there. But also, I was going to ask you, Chris, did you have anything to add on that, or does ISO have, their own document for that?
As part of just kind of ISO 27001, there is an awareness component.
Better?
And I hope I'm coming through clearly.
Yes. Yeah, you're good.
I was thinking about the different attempts we did. So we had a lot of people that were veterans, and definitely aiming for like the challenge coin aspect of it. So like, hey, you participated in an audit, here's a challenge coin. So having something like tangible as part of the Security Champions program, and then it's like, hey, I got my coin this year, or have different designs, something collectible, kind of gamified about that. I was thinking about some of the platforms. I was super late to this, so I'll have to catch up with it, Alana. But GRC solutions, like some of them do micro trainings, and it's like there's a point system, a leaderboard, things like that. Some of those have been kind of hit or miss, but at my previous company, we had a kind of like an internal like a point system that you could exchange. So that was kind of like the incentive for a lot of security things. Like, oh, you participated in the audit, here's like $5 to a gift card or to a point store, or like here's some sort of credit to something. So giveaways, definitely the carrot. PBO is putting the Mafia in GRC Mafia with a bat. So, but yeah.
Nice. Oh, you're muted, PBO.
Yeah, David, you got me over here frowning up. I'm like, you giving them coins and stuff. I'm DOD. Your reward is your job. So,
yeah.
I'm old.
Yeah. And I also just want to remind you to, whenever you've got to sign off, no worries whatsoever. Thank you so much for your time today, and amazing value. And then if you want to just email me over those slides whenever, no rush whatsoever, and I can get those out as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much. This was awesome. I hope to see you all again soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, GRC Mafia.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing she chimed on is, and I think is real big, is especially bigger companies, we do a lot of, when I work for the state, we did a lot of RFIs. These are our requirements. This is what we need from your software. And usually some executive had a couple pieces of software he really wanted us to really buy, but especially as a state government, you got to do that RFP, RFI stuff. So getting that RFI and kind of getting the information with your requirements. And like me and Steph was talking about, then I can send my security requirements over there. So once the RP come out, they won't be shocked. They know what we need. They know our requirements from a security perspective. So
I usually just have to find that information myself.
Yeah, and there's 2 different questions there that I want to circle back around to. But yeah, go ahead, Steph.
No, I said we should talk about cyber stoics.
Okay.
Like, how do you do due diligence with that vendor? I think that's a great question.
Yeah, that one's a pretty good one, because I mean, doing due diligence sometimes can be a little difficult, but sometimes you want to ask for like attestation reports, or you probably want to go ahead and see what kind of things, what they're compliant in. You want to go ahead and look at any kind of reviews, like online. You want to go ahead and see, do a parity, parodies between other vendors that do similar things. I mean, there's a lot of things to go about it. But yeah, I mean, especially like attestation reports, that can be a big helper, and then keeping those up to date as well.
Yeah, I agree. Like 8-Bit said, we're usually looking for a standard SOC 2 Type 2 from a security perspective. Those are expensive, though. I asked my boss a couple years ago. I was surprised how much SOC 2 Type 2 is. I'm like, I might have to start doing that. But and two is everybody's in AWS, so now a lot of people are FedRAMP or a few IRS or NIST 800-53. If you're in the cloud, a lot of times the specific service tells you what compliance they're set up to do. So that kind of makes it a little easier from a security standpoint. I think 8-Bit and Steph are actually getting the requirements of GRC. I usually just worry about the security of GRC. I let the other people, worry about the functionality and the business requirements of the tool. So
I think it's because I have to do both.
I think I'm just old and grumpy, so I kind of stay in my lane. Whatever you put in front of me, I'll use. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, one of the parts that I was going to just add there too is that apparently they're moving away from the name of FedRAMP and they're going over to GovRAMP now. So for government ramp, so they are changing the name to it.
I thought, is that FedRAMP or State Ramp? State Ramp was going to GovRAMP.
I thought it was going to be both of them, wasn't it?
They're in competition. Double check me though. I could be wrong. I could be
wrong.
I think
one of them is.
No, State Ramp's going to GovRAMP because they're moving up beyond the state. So I think they're actually kind of bumping heads with FedRAMP, which is kind of weird to me.
You gotta get your contacts, on a live stream, get some more interviews going, PBO. I'm gonna drop PBO's link in chat too. If you guys aren't familiar, he goes live most Tuesday nights, I should say. Yeah, but 9 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday nights on PBO's channel. That's going in chat. But yeah, that's a really good section there, and I think this is also goes really deep into NIST ISO. It kind of hurts to say that, but. Especially from the due diligence standpoint, that's one reason why that's what I've heard about ISO is pairing that with NIST for that management side of things, especially, right?
That's a heavy lift. That's a heavy lift, but go ahead, man.
I do have a comment on the due diligence side. So when I was vetting a GRC solution at my company, I was also doing the vendor risk assessment. So having to just do both things streamlined it. But asking for ISO 27001 was part of our main requirement of what we expected of vendors, SOC 2, Type 2. But then, like PBO was saying, since a lot of things are in the cloud and they need to be meeting like FedRAMP, like if you're a government entity, even saying like, okay, what storage options do we have? Like, do we need to store it in our own S3 instance or like having those options there? That was also a factor. Yeah. Like if they're not able to give you enough attestation on how they are backing up your instance, then you might move to, it's something we'll manage ourselves because we have an existing agreement with AWS. So
that makes the price go up, right, Chris?
It can, yeah. Yeah.
But two, that's an excellent point because the higher level security, then you want to run your own database, your own backups, then you start taking a little more ownership of that. Did you find a lot of people that are ISO 27? Because I think in the United States, people start doing more 27, but most people were doing this. I see more people doing more ISO now, though, too.
Yeah, I see a lot of SOC 2. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Steph.
Oh, I'd say SOC 2 is probably the most common.
Yeah, I hate SOC 2.
And a lot of people will, I think once you have SOC, then after that, you're like, I might as well just get ISO. They're not that different.
Right.
Represent, and then also Study GRC is looking for sponsors as well.
I was trying to get Monster.
Yeah, I'll have to get that G Fuel. Get that G Fuel.
yeah. Next thing you know, it's gonna be like what is it, Death Water or something like that.
Oh yeah, Liquid Death.
Liquid Death.
Yeah.
Just real quick.
Look where I can.
What's your thought? I'm not a big fan of SOC 2 Type 2s because it's an accounting firm and it seems to be a contractual agreement. Every time I look at SOC 2, the stuff I need to review is not in the SOC 2 because they made an agreement of what they're going to review. Because I think they can review they can come up with their scope, which I thought was weird. So what's your thoughts on that, Chris? From this?
Me or Chris?
Spicy.
I'm gonna call you ISO Chris. ISO Chris.
Okay,
what's
ISO
your
Chris.
thoughts on ISO Chris? What's up?
SOC 2 is like over time, so there has to be a certain level of evidence collection. I think someone asked me this during a presentation and I went blank, but it's at least like 6 months to a year worth the evidence collected. So there's a lot more. It's not just a point in time audit. Well, it's an assessment, but you have that longevity to show, hey, this has been working as expected, as designed for this amount of time. So there's quite a bit of weight to that. And I know it's kind of a CPA, background as a assessment, but
I'm hating on CPAs. Go ahead, ISO Chris.
It is, but then you also have firms, like these independent, like third-party firms that then you pay as an auditor to come out and, go over your stuff. And I don't know. I guess it does depend. I think it's really interesting right now that there are these like compliance companies now that have deals with third-party auditors. They'll give you a deal so that you can like get it at a reduced price if you use their platform in order to become compliant, get your attestation as a SOC 2. And I don't know how I feel about that. Like, not that I think everybody should have to pay like this hefty chunk of change. It just seems kind of shady through like, I don't know, automation of being like, feed in all your stuff and then we'll hook you up with an auditor.
I was asking people, they said a medium SOC 2 Type 2 is like $80,000.
It's expensive. It's very expensive.
Oh yeah.
I was like, damn. I guess I don't know, because I'd be doing them like water. I was just surprised. I was like, I'm gonna start doing SOC 2 Type 2, PBO and us. We'll have to start a firm. I just didn't expect it to be 80 or 100 grand for a SOC.
I mean, you can't even read the framework without paying for it. Like, you have to pay to read the framework too. You can't just get a copy of it and read it.
That's true.
I also wanted to mention there too, I've also heard about these vendors going to consulting agencies and saying, hey, you utilize our tools and sell that to your clients, and then we'll give you a kickback as well. And I find that to be, professionally, ethically questionable, in my opinion. I'm not going to name names, but there are two big vendors that I've heard do similar things to that. Now on the offset, it was not a small kickback. So, I mean, but yeah.
Do me a favor, Chris.
You want contact info?
No. Cyber Stoic said something about me about 6 down. Highlight that for him. He said, "Wow, calm down, PBO." I don't know.
Bread and butter.
Yeah. Take the fist down, PBO. Come on. Well, and then also in regards to that conversation too, like I've heard a lot of hate about like SOC 2 especially. There's actually a really good course I'll drop here in a moment that's like an intro to SOC 2. Right. And I think it definitely has its place, but I think it's just overly hyped, especially right now, especially for startup. I think it does have its place. My understanding is it's heavy on that financial compliance sector, to an extent. Keeping track of your books, that kind of stuff is my understanding. So no. Yeah, Steph.
Isn't that SOC 3? Like, there's different levels.
It is SOC 1, 2.
Yeah, it's 1 or 3. 2 is security.
Yeah, 3 is cloud security though. I just saw one probably where we're talking about cloud in SOC 3. So.
Well, SOC 1 is supposed to be your first 12 months. After you get audited your second time, you obtain your SOC 2, is my understanding. And then the SOC 3 is their SOC 2 redaction.
No, like Steph said, SOC 2 Type 2 is kind of security. And I thought SOC 3 came out. They were talking more cloud. Just double check me, Steph. I saw you Googling or AI in it.
Yeah. Perplexity, ChatGPT.
1. So it has a lot to do with the SOC blank type blank. So SOC 2s are service organizational controls, is a security framework that outlines how a company should manage, process, and store customer data according to 5 trust service criteria. The type 1 audit they're based on the time period. So like type 1 is a point in time that they would come in and review it, and a type 2 is over 6 months to a year, where you have to prove that you did that compliance over that entire year.
So yeah, I need it. Like I said, I'm not a huge SOC fan, but once again, I'm old and grumpy.
SOC 3s are internal security controls. I think you can kind of like do it yourself.
Okay.
It's basically performs substantially the same thing as you would during SOC 2 type 2.
Yeah, I need to dig in.
It's like redacted. Aren't SOC 3s like kind of redacted reports?
Yeah.
One of them's like a redacted report that you can do for like anybody without an NDA or whatever.
My thing is, and I think I piss people off, I still do a security review over SOC 2 type 2s because I don't trust them.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not good enough to just.
I don't trust them.
It's not good enough to just be like, do you have one? Great.
Yeah,
check. You have to go through it and review it, and you want to look at their exceptions and see what their auditor called out.
All right, 100%. Yep, 100%. And 2 is, especially in NIST and ISO and they usually have some nuances that I still want. Are you FIPS 140-2 encryption? Those nuances I don't leave up to the SOC 2 type 2 because I've seen people terminate at the load balancer and the rest of the traffic wasn't encrypted. And I think they had a certification. I was like, that's crazy. So,
yeah, I mean, and so I think going back to the due diligence question, it's not just about like collecting materials. It's you actually have to like look at their encryption standards. And that is what I'm liking about the movement to having things in a trust center where you can just do a click wrap NDA and then have everything to be like, oh, you want to see our pen tests? You want to see this? You want to see whatever it is that we have, that we say that we have, and then you can get those documents and you review them.
Yeah.
So like when I do it, I basically prepare a report and folder for my boss, who's the CISO, because it's his right accountability and decision to decide if it's secure. But I do the high level overview where I like review the privacy policy and the terms of service, because we're not cool enough to get like an SLA. Like we're there. So reviewing all of those things and doing it we do it on an annual basis for anything that stores sensitive data at all. And so I prepare a report and I go through and like summarize their security posture and then like prepare all the stuff for him to review and make a general assessment. Like no red flags that I can see.
Do you have a legal team, Steph? I used to work for
outsource. We have lawyers, but we employ a firm. We don't have an internal legal team.
So many questions there, PBO. Geez, just digging for info. No. I just wanted to mention real quick, I did drop this in chat for the SOC 2. This is a completely free course. I've talked to a lot of people who went through it, and check that out. And then go ahead and continue.
Yeah, but I'm going to drop this big gem. I need everybody to pay attention to this. When you work for a big firm, even when you do security, even if I look at it, especially privacy or anything, the second thing I'm going to do is I need legal to review this, right? Because sometimes it's the language in the security contract, right? So the 2 is if something happened, I go, legal looked at it, right? So that's my CYA, legal looked at it, right? So if you work for a big company, I always send it to legal. That's my 2 cents. Shout out to my man, Cyber Stoic. You know I love him. We love SOC 2 type 2. So I'm going to retract that. Shout out.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Getting that bread and butter. We want to welcome.
All right, come up. Correct us all. We can't hear you.
Oh, he's getting it together. I think he's getting it together. Hold on.
Come on. You got to patch it. Come on.
Why he's getting it together?
Oh, you got to patch it.
Hold on, Chris. I'm giving a shout out to B-Dub. She did excellent today. So I want to personally give her a shout out from the OG on the panel. The oldest member, B-Dub, did a great job today. So shout out.
Yeah, I also wanted to, ask B-Dubs and then also 8-Bit or Chris or Steph. Did you guys have anything else to add to these conversations on the SOC or the due diligence question there? And then if anybody else has any questions, definitely hop that in chat there, or you can come up on stage. I dropped that link a moment ago.
Well, the other thing too. Go ahead, BW first.
Oh, I was just gonna say thank you, PBO. That means a lot. B-Dubs is slightly tired at this point, but I'm here.
I'm gonna give a shout out. A lot of people don't know this. I don't give a lot of compliments out. But PBO be holding to. I don't give a lot of compliments out.
PBO goes shout out to PBO.
Yeah, shout out to me, and I be thunder punching people. We're gonna
Yeah.
get to my man 8-Bit though. 8-Bit gonna show. Go ahead, 8-Bit.
Yeah.
You chime in.
Go for it.
No worries. No, I mean, yeah, you did do an excellent job today, B-Dubs. You know, it's always good to see that you're doing so well, especially your blogs.
Thank you.
That being, yeah, of course. And we're proud of you over here, you know,
Nice.
everybody, you know, DHA and everybody else. So, I mean, you
Yeah.
know,
Means a lot.
yeah. Sometimes we need to go out, especially with, you know, Darren, Philip Wiley and the rest of them too at some point.
Yeah. Well, I hate that I missed DHA yesterday, but I'll get back out there.
It was a good one yesterday. I don't know if you know Blazy
Mhm.
Bits. I was hanging out with him most of the night, so.
Next month.
Yeah, next month.
Yeah.
But no, another thing too I wanted to mention about vendors and also evaluating vendors is sometimes that you have some other companies that can also do managed services that can help you also evaluate other types of vendors and give you options and weigh in those options. I'm not going to say which ones they are because there's a multitude of them. But then sometimes they can help you find the tools and other vendors that you can work with. Whether, you know, like if you're going to try to go for a scene, they'll give you options like Rapid7, or they'll give you options like Sentinel, or just you know, a whole bunch, and they'll do the comparisons for you, and the attestation reports, and they'll help you implement those things. Of course, so there is a cost to that, obviously. I mean, sometimes you might get the tool cheaper, but then they're also helping you implement it. So, but I just wanted to point that out, that's another way to also do your due diligence with vendors.
Yeah, the
Bam.
big dog in that, he's 100% right. When I work for big companies, they all pay for Gartner, and that's just an arm and a leg. They all do the Gartner, and Gartner for that amount, they come and give you some high level stuff. I didn't think it's worth it, but Gartner's the 800-pound gorilla in there. Stoic disappeared. Okay, he's back.
Yeah, he's like in and out. It's like he's trying to swim up here.
I don't know what's going on with him. I think I insulted him when I attacked the SOC 2 type 2. And shout out to my man, I'm Ron Quasi. We know SOC 2 is done by certified public accountants. We don't trust accountants. We don't like accountants. They're not security people. Go ahead.
So, that's actually what I wanted to bring up.
Hold on, Chris. Those views are PBO views and not the views of Study GRC.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I'm actually here in a moment. I'm gonna make a ticker, kind of like this. We have these tickers here. Every time PBO starts talking, I'm gonna make one legitimately. That's gonna be a disclaimer for PBO. But yeah, thank you for throwing that disclaimer out a little bit. Yeah, I actually wanted to bring that up because we have some pretty knowledgeable people up here on stage, and this also goes to show where community comes in and so forth. And so my understanding is that the CPA is the one who reviews and verifies the information. They're not doing the actual assessment itself. Am I wrong?
You're wrong. I work with some big accounting firms, and they did it.
But it's not a requirement, is my understanding. So you can develop the reports and so forth, and they have to go through and review the assessment, but they don't do the assessment, is my understanding.
I'll let Steph come in. When we pay you $80,000, you got to do it.
No, we have a third-party auditor that comes in and does it.
But they don't. But the actual auditor does not have to be a CPA. A CPA has to review and sign.
No. But what I'm saying is most of the firms I see are CPA firms that are coming and doing a lot of SOC 2 work. All the ones I seen done were done by a CPA firm.
I know that it was developed by whatever that ACPA or whatever, but it's not the people that are doing the reviews are auditors.
So I'm an auditor and not a CPA. Now,
yeah,
sorry, I'm sorry. My earbuds were just, everything was jacked up. I was trying to patch it, Chris. I heard you, and I was like, I can't hear it, but I can't talk. And I think it was PBO put some juju on me or something, some bad
facts,
censoring.
Facts.
But long story short, yes, correct. We have a CPA that we send our stuff to. So we do all the work. Okay. The CPA is the one that signs off on it. And she would get in trouble if we messed up. So, we make sure it goes through 3 layers of QA before it ever gets up to her. So, I mean, when you're putting your name on that dotted line, that's where
Stoic. I'm going to give you a little love. I trust you, Stoic. I scared him. He disappeared. Got them guys I don't trust. So the CPA signing off, the CPA is trusting them guys. Man, come on.
Well, I just want to make that clarification and also get everybody else's take, because that's my understanding when I was looking at SOC, is the fact that the CPA has to review it and sign off on it basically, but they're not doing the actual assessment. Now, a CPA could go through and do the assessment as well, especially if they have that capability, of course. That could make the process easier, less people involved. But the actual requirements, you can have somebody actually do the assessment, send that to a CPA third party to actually review and sign off, is my understanding.
And I think you're right. And I think where I'm kind of messing it up is, since I work for big financial companies, I think as part of our financial review, they came and did the SOC 2 type 2. But we trust Stoic. So if he signed off and gave it to the CPA, we might feel a little better about it. Go ahead. Stoic, go ahead.
Well, long story short, sorry, my wife called me that time. I'm like, man, this can't just go, I feel like Jerry just this morning where he was talking and then all of a sudden he just stopped and I was like, what the heck's going on? But anyways, yes. So the SOC 2 type 2, the type 1 being, hey, we're just doing the point in time. And then the type 2 is when we actually look at it over time. That's when we do sampling, we do the sampling during the type 2. So same thing with a SOC 1, but the SOC 1 is the more financial, and we'll look at all types of different records. And then when we go to that SOC 1 type 2, we're doing samples of those financial records. And then the SOC 3 is that overlay. And if you guys have already said all this, I do apologize for repeating myself, but I want to say thank you for your time, PBO. And when you have trust in me, I will make sure I take care of your, your SOC 2 scope. You just make sure you put it keep it simple though, because some people try to put this big, huge scope, and then other people put something as small as a truck. And I'm being facetious, but it's like, wait, how am I going to do a report on your truck? Like I told y'all before, it's like, what? Yeah. So you guys are laughing, but you know what I'm talking about. So
I do.
Look, I'm going to get off here and listen to y'all again, but my damn patches, I swear to goodness. Anyways, y'all have a great night.
Hot fix.
That's it. Exactly.
I appreciate you hopping up, especially struggling with it and so forth. Thank you very much. You have a great evening. Thanks for tuning in and joining.
Appreciate you, so.
Bam. Yeah. I just figured I'd show that. So we do actually have a whole incident response thing for when Jerry jinxes the stream.
Yeah, you were just waiting on the right time for that.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
why I
of
was
course.
laughing.
I've had that prepared on another scene for like 3 months now, and I've only used it once.
It's been at least since 2024.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's been a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot how loud it was. I was like, oh my God, what's going on?
Yeah, I was about to say, I was like, does Restream have like ads now?
I almost went through and actually had like the emergency sirens like for a nuclear disaster is what I almost implemented with it, but then I was like, nah. But yeah, if you guys have anything else to add on that portion, or anybody else has any other questions, it looks like we do have a couple things in chat here. Yeah. Remember Letty mentioning, what would a post-implementation review look like? Kind of reminds me of post-incident review.
For us, we just making sure everything got its style right. Just kind of taking it through its paces. And like she said, we have a checklist of everything we wanted in the app. So usually we have a separate test team. It's usually a couple people in each department, and they go through and run its paces to make sure everything got implemented correctly. Then usually we got some test assessments, some test reports. Usually at GRC, we're trying to keep our assets in there. So we try to start validating some of those modules to make sure all this stuff got migrated correctly, or however we were getting our stuff in there.
Go ahead, PBO. Keep on talking. No, you're fine.
I can. I can.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Oh, no. Please don't. I don't have that disclaimer up yet, and I know that you've got plenty of hours worth that you could go on with. Steph, B-Dubs, you guys have anything to add to this particular comment? No?
Not really.
I don't have any experience with it.
Facts.
I'm sure ISO has an entire document all about it, right?
No. A lot of the solutions I've used have been kind of a self-service type thing. So it's more of, okay, did we import in the sections we needed given the modules we purchased? Or are we having any hiccups with the process that we migrated from like spreadsheets into the software? And just kind of like more of a workflow thing. It's not really a formal post-implementation, because a lot of it is we did the implementation ourselves. But or we have an implementation team to kind of like put up the framework, like the frame, and then we fill it in. So yep.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of my understanding is like, you know, post implementation would be a review to show that it's being effective, it's meeting goals, it's working as intended, you know, and following along with those milestones as well. Because also, like, depending on what you're also doing, you know, you're probably going to have those, you know, 6 months, 12-month milestones as well implemented where like, oh, we hope to have this done at this date. And so a lot of that comes in with like the project management and so forth with it is how I foresee.
Usually we try to put milestones on our payables so to make sure they stay engaged. So I see our procurement, when I work for a bigger company, that's what procurement used to do. Because, you know, a lot of times you're not doing a big bang. So once I get assets in there, then you get a payment, or we get this, then you get a payment. So they try to incentivize them to, you know, stay engaged with the money.
Yeah, and then also this other question here is, could you do a comparison between SOC compliance compared to NIST or PCI, HIPAA, or otherwise? Does somebody have a direct response to that? Otherwise, like my thing is it's just another framework portion. Like Josh also mentions here that it's testing against your own company's controls. It's not really a standard or a framework in itself, like these other ones that you have mentioned here.
Yeah. So it would be like, oh, we base our stuff off of NIST or ISO or whatever. And you're like doing that. And then they come in and they say if you're doing it or not.
Yeah, I agree. Like, yeah, I'm just a NIST guy. I don't try to go on the other. Like you said, PCI is more credit cards. And a lot of times, B-dubs are definitely more into that than I am. Usually you try to keep your scope super small because you don't want credit card data going around. You want to keep your assessment small. A lot of times with NIST, we're a NIST organization. So we want the whole organization to be NIST compliant and doing all the proper NIST things. So from us, so PCI, we try to keep small. NIST, we saying we're org. So.
But I think to the point of the SOC 2 is to be like, well, we do use the NIST framework. Yep. How can we prove to our customers that we are doing these? It's just that third party auditor, but it really only is as good as the third party that you hire to do the audit.
Tracks. I think that, I'm gonna leave that alone, and I got my 2 cents on the auditor. So
not all audits are created equal.
But the sad thing is we depending on what side you're on, right? You like it. So when we get audited, we want our auditors to be weak so they don't be running our ringer through it. But when our vendors are getting audited, we want them to take them through the ringer, right? So it really depends on
which is also why I like the fact of like when you look at CMMC with the third party assessment to an extent. Now there are still some issues with that because I mean you're still paying that third party, and I mean whether you like it or not, it's still true. I mean. So, I mean, of course it's going to depend, but it's better than just having an internal doing all of it per se. No, you have somebody else.
Yeah, my only pushback on that, if a 3PL mess up, you can take their license, right? Because they charge a lot of money and fair rep approve them. So if you find some stuff wrong, you can almost get them disbarred like legal. So they do not play. They're going to charge you arm and leg, and they protecting their license because if you mess up, I'm going to tear you up. I'm just going so people don't with the thunder punch. So.
And I'm actually going to share this video here in a moment. I'll drop it in chat. But so GRC Academy recently did a podcast with an individual who went through and they made a company a few years back. Their company specializes with providing like enclaves, like actual dedicated environments for people who have to be CMMC compliant and so forth. And so they're like a middleman cloud provider for companies that need to have an area for their CMMC compliance. And they also would like assist with that process as well. What's so interesting about that particular video is he talks about how they could have saved like over $400,000 because CMMC, $485,000 mistake. And so I'm going to drop this in chat. I think it's a really great video. but it also goes to show how like they talk about they didn't understand the requirements from the get-go. They really hit the ground running too hard, and they ended up overspending. And like he even states in the video that looking back at the actual requirements and implementation that they have, it should have cost them like $140,000, but they spent over $480,000. So definitely watch that video and learn from it. There's a lot of really good advice in there that they drop on like where the pitfalls were and how they burned through so much money.
And I think scoping is huge. I think a lot of people get light on scope.
That's another really good example.
And like B-dubs with the PCI, we were really like, this is where we're going to have the credit card data is. This is where the subnet's going to be. So when they come in and do our PCI, this is the part of the network they're looking at. They're not going through our whole underwear drawer. That's what the old people say. So scoping is huge. That's going to save you a ton of money, especially with any federal data, classified HIPAA. You got to know your data flow so you can shrink your attack surface or your audit surface. And that's how you make big money. Both sides, right? So you can save your company big money or you can cost your company big money. So classifying your data, tracking your data flow, then keeping that small, keeping your area small.
I could be wrong, but with the 53, isn't it categorize and then which involves identifying and then you move into scoping before you pick your frameworks?
Well, NIST is the framework, and then you drill down per agency. I do IRS, right? So I use the IRS requirements for that. Then two, once again, when our FTI, which is federal tax information, we're trying to keep that scope small. These are the routers that went through. This is the S3 bucket if we're in the cloud. We're only moving our information in private networks, so we know exactly where it's controlled. And once again, we're trying to keep the area small and tight. Because then we can spend extra money to keep hackers away without spending money on everything. But once again, that's scoping. But the thing I find that is amazing, a lot of people don't know where their data's at and where it's going, which I think is weird. When you start talking to them, where it go? Where it kind of goes through here, over there. Then you ask them, well, where did it FTP in? How did it get to the database? How did it get to the app?
Data flows.
The next thing you know, it's like touching their whole network. And I'm like, dude, that's going to cost $1 gazillion.
A gazillion?
Well, 485,000 for us medium business. I think they have 50 employees, and it was 485, and they went. So like he mentions in the video, which I found like really surprising, is that basically, in short, the one way that they got to that amount so rapidly over like a 1.5 year period is because they were basically running off of a CMMC level 3. They actually said that they could, in theory, go for a CMMC level 3 because they went too hard on it. But they were literally told, oh yeah, you have unlimited budget. Like, and I think that was another pitfall on that. But for an example, they actually have on disk encryption, and then the way that they change those out and everything else is like way beyond. It's kind of interesting. I highly recommend listening to that video.
And I think one of the hidden gems is when you get accustomed to GRC, you can recommend things that are much cheaper. Like you can lose Lux or BitLocker. Those are inexpensive, but they're FIPS 140-2. That meets that encryption level, and they don't cost a ton of money. So as you become familiar with those technologies, you can start recommending that. When somebody's coming saying, well, you need this super duper, like, nah, man, we run a BitLocker. We're not doing all of that, man.
See, that's when you start, you're starting to scope creep, if you're going to start looking into too much.
Another thing that they mentioned in that video too was like one of their firewalls or something along those lines had an update, and because of their change management policies, they could not push the update because they have to verify that those won't cause issues from a security standpoint beforehand. So then they literally had an entire testing environment that would take them 3 months to go through and verify. Meanwhile, there's an actively exploited CVE going on. Like, so that's also some different steps that they learned from going through that process as well. I found it very insightful.
Yeah, and I mean, that's when you start talking about your maturity level. How are you testing it? Where can you test it? Do you have a small test environment? And two, a lot of times, if you read them, they kind of tell you what the risk is. A lot of times you read. Now, sometimes they're wrong, but most of the time you're like, Yeah, the odds of that actually doing something to our network is small. So let's push it, do something like test, and let's roll it out. Because two is you have a risk. Either you risk in not testing it, or you have a Cat 1 open vulnerability where Russia's gonna get you. So sometimes you gotta weigh those to figure out how you want to release it.
Yeah. And doesn't NIST have an entire thing for change management too?
It does. For me, where they put it though is kind of weird. Their change management is in configuration management, because your configuration management, you got to test before you roll it out. And for them, from a technology standpoint, that's kind of their change management. Because you gotta go through you gotta go through a CCB, you gotta test it, you gotta
careful PBO
environment. So
yeah, and if you guys want to learn more, then PBO's course will be coming out here in the near future.
Try. I got to stay off your lives and do some work.
Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, and so like Brexy mentions, well, that change management is just dumb. You're supposed to expedite change management when you have an urgent issue like that. Well, and so like they also mentioned in the video that I dropped there, that the reason that it was like that is because they were going off extreme, like the high baselines. And so in that type of environment, you cannot go through and just update something, even if it has an actively exploited vulnerability out. They have to go through that process. Now, I'm sure that they could have just went through and accepted the risk and everything else, but because they were going through and trying to be compliant with that level 3 CMMC or otherwise, they also didn't want to. The reason they didn't push it is because, 12 months from now, when we actually go through and get accredited for this, they're going to see that acceptance, and we don't want that to backfire on us. So they were following it to a T. And of course, looking back now, they're like, oh yeah, that was really stupid. But yeah.
That should be in your change management and configuration. You should have emergency releases in there. There's some times you're in production and it's broke. We're like, all right, we're going to fix it in production, but then we got to go back and get our documents right. You got to have some emergency procedures in there, because something's going to happen and you have to roll your sleeves up, and we call it Superman. You got to put your cape on and fix it. So you got to figure out how to back document that. So,
yeah. What else do we have? We are coming to an end here in a few minutes. We could probably start going through and doing our recaps. So Chris, any particular, last words or anything like that before we sign off here? Anything going on?
Not a lot on my side. I definitely wanted to stay more active in these talks and hop on stage more. So hoping to, and also B-Dub's awesome job today. I was actually working on my personal website as you were walking through it, and I was taking more of the DJ BSEC route and working on GitHub pages. So, but definitely inspired me to pick up starting a blog and getting things out there. So awesome job today.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
When's your next talk lined up?
Mine?
No, Chris's.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, currently working on that next talk.
We'll get to you, B-Dubs.
Public Speaking Masters with Simply Cyber. Hoping to do technical writing for GRC, because either you are working with a technical writer or you need to ramp up really quick on technical writing when it comes to being an analyst. So,
and that's the last Tuesday of every month. So that's going to be on the 25th in the Simply Cyber Discord.
Yep.
I suck at that. Shout out to Chris. Shout out to ISO Chris. Yeah, I suck at technical writing.
Yeah, and thank you so much for hopping up and so forth too. I appreciate it.
Hoping to be more active.
What's up?
Final words or remarks or anything else going on that you want to share?
No, well, I mean, I thought it was a really interesting topic today, because I mean, it's a lot of stuff that I have to deal with quite often recently. Like I said, I'm more of a engineer or a practitioner, but it seems like I have to deal with vendors more and more and more, and GRC stuff as well as of lately, especially going through our own audits. So I mean, some of the stuff, even I'm still learning, by getting these reports together, because I mean, even reports themselves, there's no standard, and that's difficult on its own, especially when you're trying to put together an entire, you know, cybersecurity framework, or you know, when you're trying to put it all together from scratch. So it's just you know, it's just really interesting and hearing everybody's thoughts. So yeah, that's
Bam.
pretty much all I gotta say.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. And then also, I'll be getting those slides from that presentation and publish those in the Discord server as well, probably tomorrow or otherwise when I get it from her. And then PBO?
No, like you said, I thought she gave an excellent talk. And like A-Bit said, I think a lot of people, third-party assessment's huge, and that's what you're doing with internal, external vendors. So I think that's kind of a hidden gem to help you get in the industry, because everybody's buying software, everybody's doing RFP, and everybody's kind of doing some kind of assessment. So getting up on those third-party assessments is pretty crucial.
Bam. And then B-Dubs?
Oh, it's my turn now?
Facts.
I was muted. I stay muted. And I was in another window. Sorry. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing everyone on Saturday at the CISSP study group, and then I have my blog coming out. Other than that, blog coming out on Monday. Other than that, I don't have anything. This was a great presentation. I'm incredibly tired and they're making fun of me for it. So yeah, that's what I'm dealing with over here.
Yeah, I mean, don't you have like a case of monsters on standby, like behind breaking glass? You know,
I don't have a case of monsters. I have a mini fridge full of monsters.
Oh, that's there.
Right
See, there you go.
I have more than a case. Yeah.
I'm still trying to convince wife. I'm still trying to convince the wife for a mini fridge in my room.
It's a birthday present.
Oh my gosh!
Just buy it.
Yeah.
I just
walked
the 25 feet, like. And then now, Steph, final last words or otherwise? Takeaways?
Great presentation. I'm really glad I showed up tonight. So, really good. I don't do stuff. I just work. Enjoy my life.
Yeah.
And come to these so I have other people to talk to. But
yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll have to miss AMA tomorrow. It's my birthday tomorrow, so I'm going to take the day off.
Oh, wow. Happy birthday. That's awesome.
Happy birthday.
Hopefully you don't end up working yourself on your birthday.
I'm not going to. I'm going to Slack is snoozed, and I'm not going to look at it. I'm going to go to the hot springs, do some stuff. It'll be fun.
Bam.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you all for hopping up on the stage and so forth. I really appreciate it. And everybody else in chat too. Thanks for hopping in, GRC Mafia. I just wanted to mention real quick that tomorrow at 11 a.m., we did replace our AMA with CISO Assistant installation. So CISO Assistant will be joining us for going over and actually showcasing step-by-step how to set it up on Docker and in the cloud for their community edition. So each and every single one of you guys can go through and get that set up. So that's going to be tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central Time, noon Eastern. But yeah, thank you all for joining. Catch you guys next time. See you guys in Discord. See you guys tomorrow. You guys have a great rest of your week and evening. GRC Mafia.